Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast, Is It Worth It? Today, we are doing a deep dive into a city that honestly most people just skip right past. We're auditing Trieste, Italy.
Right, it's that border city you see on the map on your way to Venice or, Ljubljana. But a rapidly growing number of people are actually wishing they had given it more than just a quick afternoon stop.
Yeah, exactly. And for 2026 and 2027, the real story here is all about value versus timing. If you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple.
Which is super important for this one because our mission today is to methodically evaluate exactly who the city is for and, just as importantly, who needs to skip it.
Because it is definitely not for everyone.
Definitely not. We're going to uncover the very real financial realities for 2026 and 2027. Like looking at everything from the granular daily budgets to those hidden logistics traps that can just quietly ruin your whole itinerary.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start because we really need to reset your expectations. Like picture an Italian city in your mind right now.
You're probably picturing rolling hills, maybe a gondola, right?
Yeah, exactly. A Renaissance dome or, I don't know, definitely someone eating pasta on a cobblestone street.
Yeah.
But what if the most fascinating city in Italy isn't really Italian at all?
Which sounds crazy, but it's true.
Right. What if they speak their own completely localized coffee language and the famous beaches are actually made of solid concrete and the wind is occasionally so violent they literally tie ropes to the sidewalks just so you can walk?
It's wild. That is the exact cognitive dissonance of Trieste. You step off the train, expecting the Amalfi Coast, and you are immediately hit with what feels like Central Europe.
It's a huge shock if you aren't ready for it.
Yeah, so here is the contrarian claim that you absolutely must understand before you even start looking at flights. Trieste is the most un-Italian city in Italy.
That's a bold claim.
I mean, it is, but counterintuitively, that's the exact mechanism driving its massive value in 2026 and 2027. To understand the street-level reality, you have to look at the history.
Right, because it wasn't always just some Italian border town.
Exactly. Up until 1918, Trieste was not some minor, forgotten Italian outpost. It was actually the primary, vital seaport of the massive Austro-Hungarian Empire.
So the Habsburgs essentially needed a gateway to the sea, right? And they just poured all their imperial wealth into this one specific spot on the map.
They absolutely did.
It's basically like a Central European capital, like a
Yes.
Vienna or a Ljubljana that just happens to be wearing an Italian mask.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. The architecture there is not an accident. It was this deliberate projection of imperial power.
Which you feel the second you get there.
Oh, instantly. When you walk the streets, you're flanked by these grand, imposing Habsburg facades. You step into Piazza Unità d'Italia, which is this magnificent, vast square facing the sea, and you're sitting in Viennese-style coffee houses.
It doesn't feel like Rome at all.
Not even close. The prevailing atmosphere is this Central European seriousness. It feels so much closer in spirit to Vienna than it ever does to Naples.
But so why are we doing a deep dive on this specific city right now? Like, what is the urgency for the 2026 and 2027 travel window?
The urgency is coming from a massive shift in the broader travel market. Over the last couple of years, there's been this rapidly growing narrative dubbing Trieste as the affordable anti-Venice.
Wow, affordable anti-Venice. That is a potent label.
Very potent. And it has predictably driven a real uptick in visitors who are just, frankly, exhausted by the crushing crowds in standard Italian hubs.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, but with more visitors, we're seeing the classic economic creep of prices. The value is still exceptional by Western European standards. I mean, it really is. But the creep is very real right now.
Give me an example of the creep.
We'll take a simple cappuccino on Piazza Unità. A few years ago, that was sitting comfortably under $1. Now, it's hovering around $1.60 to $1.90 USD in those tourist-facing cafes.
Which is still cheap, but it's practically doubled. That creep is exactly why we need to lay out the anchor cost for you right now. Just to ground the rest of this deep dive in pure, undeniable math.
Let's do it.
So if you are flying from the U.S. or outside of Europe, which usually means one stop via a major European hub into Trieste Airport, airport code TRS, those flights are running roughly $260 to $500 return during the shoulder season.
Which is a pretty decent window.
Yeah, totally reasonable. And once you land, the airport bus into the city is about $5 to $6.
Very affordable.
A mid-range hotel, double room, off-peak, will cost you between $95 and $150 a night.
Try finding that in Venice.
Good luck. And for food, A full sit-down dinner with wine for 2 people is going to land somewhere around $55 to $80.
Honestly, a steal for Italy.
Right. So a comfortable mid-range daily budget for one person is basically hovering near $120 to $155.
And what's really fascinating here is how those numbers perfectly illustrate the timing tightrope you have to walk in 2026.
The calendar game.
Exactly. The equation is incredibly rigid. If you go during the optimal months, Trieste punches way above its financial weight. It is a legitimate bargain.
But there is a massive calendar trap, right?
A huge one. The Barcolana regatta. It's a spectacular maritime event every October, but if you book blindly during it, you are going to overpay by 50 to 100% for the exact same room.
Ouch. We'll definitely dig into those trap dates in a minute. But before we even get into the calendar logistics, we really have to issue a glaring, flashing skip if signal to you guys.
Yes, please. This is vital.
Because when you hear seaport in Italy, a very specific demographic of travelers immediately starts packing their swimsuits and SPF.
And they will be deeply, profoundly disappointed. So here is the immediate skip-if signal. Skip Trieste if your entire holiday concept revolves around lying on soft sand with a cocktail in your hand.
Just don't go.
Right. Anyone expecting a traditional, plush resort beach holiday will be totally baffled by this city. Trieste's beaches are essentially concrete bathing platforms and rocky stretches.
Literally just concrete slabs.
Yeah, take the famous Barcola area, for example. The water is beautiful, it's clear, it's wonderful for swimming. But the physical setup is strictly functional. You are laying your towel on a flat expanse of concrete.
Which is such a vibe, but not a resort vibe.
Exactly. It's an urban bathing culture, not a tropical one.
Oh.
If you arrive expecting a resort, you will spend your entire trip trying to figure out why on earth everyone told you to come here.
Exactly. Knowing who this city is actually for is the foundation of a good trip. Which brings us directly to how the geography and the wild weather patterns dictate exactly when you should pursue those anchor costs we just outlined.
Because Trieste is definitely not a generic year-round Mediterranean postcard.
No, it absolutely is not. It heavily rewards meticulous planning. So let's break down the calendar game. The absolute best months are May, June, and September.
Yeah, in May and June, you get temperatures that are warm and pleasant, but not brutal yet. You have long daylight hours.
And the water is finally warming up.
Right. By late June, the Adriatic Sea is finally warm enough for the local bathing crowd out at Barcola. And crucially, your hotel prices are still in that reasonable band we discussed. Those mid-range doubles are holding steady at 95 to 140 USD.
But looking at the data from the sources, September is the real sweet spot, isn't it? The math and the weather just align perfectly.
September is arguably the single most optimal window you can choose. Think about the mechanics of the Mediterranean late summer. The intense, oppressive peak heat starts to ease off.
Thank goodness.
Right. The Italian school holidays are over, which naturally thins out that massive wave of domestic tourism. Meanwhile, the sea has been acting as a thermal battery all summer, so it is highly swimmable and warm.
And the budget side of it.
From a budget perspective, prices settle back down near their annual baseline, right before the massive October regatta spike hits.
Okay, contrast that optimal window with the absolute worst time to go, the deep winter. And, we're not just talking about the temperature-dropping to jacket weather here.
Yeah.
The context is a very unique meteorological phenomenon.
Oh, yes. The worst months for pure physical comfort are that deep winter stretch from December through February. And it's not because Trieste is freezing cold in the way that, Stockholm or Oslo is.
It's a different kind of cold.
It is cold in a very specific, punishing Mediterranean sense. The core issue is the Bora wind.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to make sure we do not understate the sheer physics of this wind. We're not talking about a brisk breeze that turns your umbrella inside out.
No, not at all. The Bora is a fierce, katabatic northeast wind. To understand it, you have to look at the topography. Trieste sits at the edge of the sea, right? And it's backed by the steep karst plateau.
A huge drop in elevation.
Exactly. In the winter, this dense, freezing air builds up behind the mountains, and then it funnels violently down that steep gradient, plunging directly into the city and out over the Gulf.
And how fast are we talking?
It can gust past 100 kilometers per hour. That is roughly 60 miles per hour. It is a defining physical force of the city.
That's practically a tropical storm level wind.
It's intense. In fact, it's occasionally so strong that the municipal government actually strings heavy guide ropes along the exposed streets near the waterfront.
Wait, literal ropes on the sidewalk?
Literal guide ropes, specifically so pedestrians can grab on and pull themselves along without being physically blown over by the wind?
Guide ropes on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That is wild. It paints a picture of a city that is practically under siege by its own weather.
It really does. It's genuinely woven into Trieste's identity. Now, a moderate Bora day can actually be thrilling. It blows away all the humidity, the sky turns this brilliant, piercing blue, and it feels invigorating.
But a bad day.
A severe Bora day in January turns the seafront promenade into a literal physical battle. It alters everything. It can even disrupt the small regional planes trying to land at the TRS airport.
Okay, so you're fighting the wind in the winter. But in the early autumn, you are fighting the crowds. Which brings us to that Barcolana trap we mentioned. To really visualize this, compare Piazza Unità on a normal June evening versus the second week of October.
Huge difference. On an ordinary evening in June, the piazza is comfortably busy. People are having aperitivos, taking strolls, but it's never that shoulder-to-shoulder claustrophobic crush you find in Venice. You have immense breathing room.
Right. And then October happens.
Then comes Barcolana. In 2026, the specific dates to circle in red on your calendar are October 2nd to the 11th, culminating in the main race on that final Sunday.
And this isn't just a local boat race, right?
No, this event draws well over 1,000 boats and hundreds of thousands of spectators to the Gulf of Trieste. It is visually spectacular, an incredible festival of international sailing.
But wait. Hundreds of thousands of people descending on a city that we just established isn't the mass-market tourist hub. That sounds like trying to fit a Super Bowl crowd into a ski resort village.
That is the exact dynamic. The city's hotel stock is relatively compact. It's absolutely not built for hundreds of thousands of sudden, simultaneous arrivals.
The prices just go insane.
The mechanism of supply and demand takes over entirely. Accommodation across the entirety of Trieste essentially vanishes, and the prices roughly double for whatever is actually left.
So what's the strategy?
If your dates are flexible and you are not specifically a sailing enthusiast coming for the regatta, you must avoid October 2nd to the 11th completely.
Just cross it out.
Exactly. If you are coming for Barcolana, the absolute rule is to book 6 to 8 months in advance and simply accept that you're paying a massive premium. Alternatively, you have to look at commuting in by train from nearby Monfalcone or even across the border from Slovenia.
Okay, so assuming we dodge the wind and we dodge the regatta, we need to map out the actual zone crowding. When you're just walking around on a Tuesday in September, what is the spatial reality of the city?
You basically have 3 distinct zones of density. First, Piazza Unità d'Italia. It's the largest sea-facing square in Europe. It is the visual centerpiece of the city.
And because it's so huge, I imagine it handles crowds well.
It absorbs crowds incredibly well, but it is consistently the busiest spot at golden hour, and it's completely packed during any civic or cultural event.
Okay, what's zone 2?
Second, you have the Canal Grande and the surrounding Borgo Tiziano. This is a very elegant 18th century grid of streets where most of the good mid-range hotels are concentrated.
And is that crowded?
It gets wonderfully lively in the evenings around its restaurants and bars, but because of the grid layout, it remains highly walkable and never really feels choked.
And the third zone?
Further out, northwest of the center toward Miramare Castle is the Barcola seafront. This long, concrete bathing promenade is where the locals go to socialize and swim.
So that's where the locals are.
Exactly. It gets genuinely full-on hot summer weekends. It's a highly localized density. Tourists are in the center. Locals are at Barcola.
What about cruise ships? That is always the elephant in the room when we audit any European port city. Are we talking about a Venetian level of invasion?
The cruise pressure exists for sure, but it is modest in comparison to Venice or Dubrovnik. Trieste is definitely a growing cruise port.
So you do notice when they dock.
Oh, yeah. On a day when a large ship is docked, you will absolutely feel the demographic shift. Piazza Unità and the massive Molo Audis pier will feel noticeably busier from mid-morning to late afternoon.
But it's not unmanageable.
The critical difference is volume and space. The ships are not arriving in a relentless daily armada, and Trieste's wide-open architectural layout absorbs thousands of day trippers far better than Venice's narrow, winding alleys ever could.
I do have a question about getting around specifically that Apposina tram. Is it worth building an itinerary around that?
Oh, I have to deliver some hard truth here. The tram is beautiful, but it has been suspended since a 2016 crash.
Oh, wow. Since 2016.
Yes. So absolutely check the status online first before you go, and always have a bus backup plan in mind because it probably won't be running.
Good to know. Well, knowing exactly when to go and how to navigate the calendar is half the battle. The other half is what happens the very moment you touch down. The arrival logistics often set the tone for the entire trip, and obviously, the budget.
So true. If you're flying, you'll land at Trieste Airport, located at Ronchi dei Legionari. The defining feature of this airport is that it sits about 33 kilometers, or roughly 20 miles, northwest of the city, near the town of Monfalcone.
So it's a bit of a trek.
It is. The airport itself is small, calm, and generally devoid of the overwhelming chaos you find at Rome Fiumicino or Milan Malpensa. But the primary decision you make the second you walk out of the terminal dictates your initial budget.
Let me guess, it's the classic airport bus versus the taxi dilemma.
Exactly. But the cost delta here is extreme. The cheapest and most efficient transfer is the airport bus, specifically the E51 or G51 line run by the regional operator.
And how much is that?
It costs a mere $5 to $6 USD and takes roughly 50 minutes to reach Trieste's central bus station on Piazza della Libertà, which is immediately adjacent to the main train station.
Oh, that's super easy.
There is also a highly efficient train link via the airport's dedicated Trieste Airport railway station that connects directly to the regional train network.
And if you just, wave down a taxi because you're tired and dragging a suitcase.
If you decide to take a taxi from the airport to the city center, you are entering a completely different world of money. Because of the 33-kilometer highway distance and monopoly pricing, expect to pay roughly $65 to $90 USD one way.
Ouch. $90 versus $5.
Huge difference. The bus or the train should be your absolute default. The only reason to take a taxi is if your flight is delayed and you land incredibly late at night after the regional services have stopped running.
A huge portion of travelers arrive by train, though, especially if they are doing a larger northern Italy itinerary. How does that arrival feel?
The train arrival is arguably the best entry point. Trieste Centrale connects to Venice in under 2 hours and onward across the rest of Italy. If you arrive by train, you step out onto Piazza della Libertà.
So you're right in it.
Instantly. You are right at the northern edge of the elegant Borgo Teresiano. From there, it is a completely flat, easy 10 to 15-minute walk right to the heart of Piazza Unità.
Perfect.
Similarly, if you take a bus from Ljubljana or anywhere across the border, you arrive at the adjacent bus terminal, putting you in the exact same advantageous starting position.
So you're standing outside the station, you've saved a ton of money by not taking a taxi, and you're ready to explore. But this is where looking at a flat 2D map on your phone can completely betray you. We need to explain the topography friction.
Yes, topography is a major variable here. Trieste is built on a slope that rises sharply from the Adriatic.
But down by the water is okay.
The waterfront and the Teresiano grid are perfectly flat, making them incredibly easy to navigate with luggage or a stroller. But the old city, particularly the historic area spiraling up around the Cathedral of San Giusto and its castle, climbs very steeply up the hill.
So you really need to check elevation when booking an Airbnb.
100%. This gradient is a major factor to consider when booking a hotel, especially because when that Bora wind is blowing, climbing that steep hill requires genuine physical exertion.
But despite the hills in the back, the immediate waterfront gives this profound sense of space. Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The grandeur to crowd ratio in this city is just phenomenal.
It is invariably the first positive surprise most travelers experience. You walk into Piazza Unità, and it is vast. It's framed by these monumental, ornate Habsburg palazzi on 3 sides, and the 4th side is completely open, looking straight out to the horizon of the sea.
You don't have to elbow your way through to see anything.
Exactly. There are no turnstiles, no claustrophobic crushes of tour groups holding up umbrellas to follow a guide. It feels open and dignified. Furthermore, navigating the broader city is remarkably economical. A single Trieste Trasporti bus ticket is only about $1.60 USD.
That's so cheap.
And because the core center is so compact and visually rewarding, you'll find yourself mostly walking anyway.
Comparing this to the standard Italian tourist hubs where you're immediately fighting off aggressive taxi touts and dodging selfie sticks, the arrival in Trieste just feels remarkably stress-free. Assuming, of course, that you dodged that $90 taxi trap.
Precisely. If you manage your transfer smartly, your initial impression of Trieste is one of calm efficiency, architectural grandeur, and immediate tangible value.
So once you have successfully navigated either that flat, elegant grid or trekked up the steep hills of the old town, where exactly should you sleep? Like, how far does that value extend? Let's break down the accommodation landscape into 4 distinct traveler tiers, because the pricing mechanics here are fascinating.
The overarching good news that defines Trieste is that even the top-end luxury is cheaper than what you would pay for an average room in Venice.
Which is music to my ears. Let's start with the backpacker and budget tier.
Your optimal geographical zone for this is around the train station and the northern edge of the Borgo Teresiano, particularly near Piazza Oberdan. Hostels and simple guest houses here run roughly $28 to $45 USD for a dorm bed and $60 to $80 for a basic private double.
Wait, $60 for a private double in Italy? That's incredibly low.
Yeah.
What is the trade-off for that price point?
The trade-off is size and acoustics. You're a very short walk from the main transport hubs, which is highly convenient, but the cheapest rooms are often quite small. They frequently face the street, and because Trieste has such a vibrant late-night cafe and bar culture, you are absolutely going to deal with street noise.
So bring earplugs.
Definitely. This tier perfectly suits solo travelers and the younger crowd who would much rather spend their daily budget on local wine and food than on high thread count sheets and soundproofing.
That makes total sense. Moving up, we have the mid-range tier. And looking at the data, this really seems to be the sweet spot for the entire city.
It absolutely is. This tier is the primary reason the travel industry calls Trieste such exceptional value. You want to aim for the Borgo Teresiano around the Canal Grande or the streets just off Piazza Unità.
What kind of places are we talking about?
We are talking about solid 3- and 4-star hotels or smart owner-operated B&Bs. In the shoulder season, May, June, September, these run about $95 to $150 USD a night.
And the location is good.
Incredible. This zone is perfectly flat, immensely walkable, packed with cafes, and puts the main square, the Moloados Pier, and the premium shopping streets within a 5 to 10-minute walk.
Are there noise issues in the mid-range tier as well? Because staying right on the canal sounds romantic, until 2 a.m.
That is a very astute point. Canal side and square side rooms cost a premium for the view, but they are exactly where the evening crowds congregate. The pro tip here is to explicitly request a courtyard-facing room when you book if you are a light sleeper. You sacrifice the view, but you guarantee the quiet.
What about the family tier? Traveling with kids changes the spatial math completely. A standard European double room just doesn't work.
Families generally do best stepping out of the traditional hotel ecosystem entirely and booking a larger apartment or an apart-hotel. You want to look either in the Teresiano or slightly further out, moving northwest toward Barcola.
What's the budget for that?
You should budget roughly $120 to $200 USD a night for a comfortable 2-bedroom setup. If you head in the Barcola direction, you get immediate access to the seafront bathing promenade for the kids to burn off energy, and you just take a quick, cheap tram or bus ride into the center.
The trade-off there being you lose that magical step out of your door into a historic square feeling.
Exactly. The historic center has very few large multi-room family suites available at a reasonable price. So you are consciously trading ultimate walkability for necessary square footage. And if you stay near Barcola, you become mildly dependent on the bus schedule.
Finally, the luxury tier. If you really want to splash out and celebrate an anniversary or something, what does luxury look like here and what does it cost?
Trieste's grand hotel scene is genuinely elegant, steeped in history, yet it remains a relative bargain on the European scale. We are looking at the landmark 5-star properties right on Piazza Unità and the historic Savoia-style waterfront hotels.
And the price.
These premium rooms run roughly $220 to $400 USD a night. To put that in stark perspective, that is a fraction of what comparable historically significant properties cost in Venice, Florence, or on Lake Como.
I had to push back on that a bit, though. $220 to $400 for a 5-star hotel in a prime Italian city. What is the catch? What are they sacrificing to keep the price that low? We need to clarify what luxury actually means here.
That is a crucial distinction, and there is a catch. Luxury in Trieste means grand Habsburg architecture, soaring ceilings, immense historical weight, and very formal traditional service.
That's classic.
Very. It means walking down a grand staircase where European royalty used to walk. It does not mean modern spa resort gloss. You aren't getting sprawling infinity pools, cutting-edge wellness centers, or minimalist, tech-heavy rooms. You have to match your expectations to the city's specific historical character. It's an antique luxury.
And across all these tiers, from the backpacker to the grand hotel, There's a hidden municipal cost that catches people off guard when they're checking out on their final morning.
Yes, the tourist tax, or imposta di soggiorno. It's a standard municipal levy across Italy, but people always forget it. It's added at checkout on top of your prepaid room rate.
How much is it usually?
It's typically a few dollars per person per night, and it scales upward depending on the star rating of your hotel. Just factor it into your mental budget so it isn't a frustrating surprise when you're rushing to catch a train.
All right, so you've saved a significant amount of money on the hotel compared to the rest of Italy. Now it's time to spend it on Trieste's most famous cultural export. The coffee, and of course, the wildly unique border cuisine.
The food culture in Trieste is a fascinating study in geography and history. It is fundamentally a border cuisine. You have an Italian base, pasta, seafood, olive oil, but it's heavily overlaid with dense Austro-Hungarian and Slovenian culinary traditions.
I can't wait to talk about the food.
But before we even get to the food, we have to talk about the absolute lifeblood of the city, the coffee. Trieste is universally recognized as Italy's coffee capital. It's the historic working home of the massive Illy roasting empire, which was founded and maintains its headquarters right here.
I love this part. This is where the city's unique identity really shines. The dialect password. Because you walk into a cafe in Trieste and just order a generic coffee or a macchiato, you are marking yourself as an outsider immediately, aren't you? Let's break down this linguistic quirk. Why does a city in Italy have its own entirely separate language just for ordering coffee?
It stems from that exact border city defiance and unique cultural blending. Trieste spent so long outside of Italy that it developed its own highly localized customs. In the rest of Italy, asking for a cafe gets you a standard short espresso. But in Trieste, the locals use their own specific dialect to dictate exactly what they want.
So how do I order a regular espresso?
If you want a standard espresso, you order a nero, literally meaning black.
Okay, Nero. Got it. And a macchiato.
If you want a macchiato, which is an espresso with a dash of warm, frothy milk, you order a capo. Yep. And if you want that macchiato served in a small glass rather than a ceramic cup, which is highly popular because it lets you see the layers of coffee and milk, you order a capo in B, with the B standing for bicchiere, the Italian word for glass.
Nero, capo, and B. It's like a secret civic handshake.
Yeah.
You memorize that, you walk up to the zinc bar, you say it with confidence, and they treat you like a regular. So where should you actually go to use these passwords? What are the specific historic spots, and what is the financial damage?
For coffee, the historic wood-paneled houses are the essential experience. These aren't just cafes, they were the living rooms of the city's intellectuals. You have Cafe San Marco on Via Cesare Battisti, which is an absolute institution with a working bookstore inside.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It is. You also have the spectacular, ornate, Viennese-style Cafe degli Specchi right on Piazza Unita. And then there's Cafe Tomaseo, the oldest operating cafe in the city.
And the prices.
If you participate in the traditional Italian method, standing at the bar to drink your coffee quickly, an espresso or a nero will cost you a remarkably low $1.30 to $1.60 USD. A cappuccino is about $1.60 to $2.20.
What if I want to sit down?
Now, if you choose to take a seat at a table on the terrace at Piazza Unita to people watch, expect those prices to push toward the higher end, as you are essentially paying rent for the premium real estate.
What about the actual food? Because if the architecture is Austrian, I have to imagine the menus aren't just endless pages of spaghetti pomodoro.
Not at all. You absolutely have to visit a traditional buffet. These are casual, historic eateries that serve as the backbone of the city's lunch scene. Buffet de Pepi, located near the Canal Grande, is the absolute zenith of this tradition.
What do they serve?
They serve these incredible, steaming local bolito and porcino pork plates. It is hearty, meat-heavy, horseradish-spiced Austro-Hungarian fare. A substantial, incredibly filling plate there runs roughly $12 to $18 USD.
That sounds incredible.
You also have to try girotta, the definitive local soup. It is a thick, rich stew made of beans, sauerkraut, and pork. The sourness of the kraut cuts through the richness of the meat perfectly. A bowl runs about $8 to $12.
And for dinner?
For dinner, if you want to pivot back to something more traditionally Mediterranean, a sit-down seafood dinner, perhaps some fresh Adriatic sea bass, paired with a glass of crisp local Friulian white wine for two people will come in around $55 to $80.
If you are an Airbnb traveler, or a family that needs to self-cater, or you just want to grab some snacks for a day trip, how are the grocery prices holding up in 2026?
Very reasonable, which just reinforces the city's overall value. You can visit the covered market, or rely on standard supermarkets like Dispar, Canad, and Eurospar, which are conveniently located around the center.
Give me some baseline prices.
You can pick up a liter of decent, drinkable local wine starting from just $4. A take-home pack of premium illy coffee or beans from a smaller local artisanal roaster starts around $6. Fresh bread from a bakery is about $1.50. A half liter of local beer will set you back $1.30 to $2, and bottled water is well under $1.
We should definitely touch on the etiquette around tipping and paying too, because Americans in particular get very anxious about this and end up over-tipping by 20%.
It is crucial to remember that tipping here is not the U.S.-style 20% baseline. The service workers are paid a standard wage. Furthermore, a service charge or cover charge known as the coperto of $2 to $3.50 per person will often automatically appear on your restaurant bill just for sitting down.
Right, the coperto covers the bread and the table setting.
Exactly. Because of that coperto, simply rounding up the final bill by €1 or $2 is considered plenty of a tip for good service. For everyday, smaller transactions, carrying small change is vital.
Like coins.
Yes. Having a €150 or €250 coin or note is perfect. That equates to roughly $1.65 to $2.75 USD, and it's exactly what you need to quickly pay for a small pastry or a quick glass of house wine at a local bar without frustrating the bartender by fumbling with large bills.
So tallying up all these meals, the affordable beds, the cheap transport, it leads directly into the hard daily math. So what does this all mean for the wallet? Let's stop talking in abstractions and get into the precise line item budgets.
Let's do it. I will break down the 5 traveler personas strictly in USD, explaining exactly the mechanism of why the numbers look the way they do based on daily habits. First, the backpacker. The daily budget here is roughly $60 to $80.
How does that break down?
Here is the why. Your dorm bed is $28 to $45. Your food is $18 to $25, which you achieve by having a cheap bakery breakfast, grabbing a $6 sandwich for lunch, and hitting a budget buffet for dinner.
And transport.
Transport is just $3 to $5 on a couple bus tickets, mostly because you walk everywhere. You allocate $5 to $10 for attractions, keeping it incredibly low by leaning on free sites like Piazza Unità, the Mullo Audis Pier, and the stunning historic churches, and you keep a $6 to $10 buffer for incidentals.
What's the main way backpackers blow this budget?
The big mechanism of failure for backpackers here, if you sit down at the premium cafe terraces on the main square instead of standing at the bar, or if you spend the evening drinking heavily in the craft beer bars, you will shatter this budget instantly.
Okay, what about the mid-range traveler? The person who wants comfort but isn't, chartering a yacht.
The mid-range daily budget is roughly $120 to $155 per person. This assumes you're splitting a room with a partner, so your half of $120 to $150 double room is $60 to $80.
And food.
Food is $40 to $55. That covers a sit-down cafe breakfast, a light lunch, and a proper sit-down dinner with wine. Transport remains low at $5. You allocate $15 to $25 for premium attractions like entry to Mirror Castle and maybe one museum, and you have a $10 to $15 buffer.
Which is honestly so reasonable.
Note this mechanism very carefully, though. This exact same day, this exact level of comfort, square footage, and dining quality would easily cost you $180 to $230 in Venice. That spread is the core value proposition of Trieste.
Now, the family budget. 2 adults, 2 kids. This is where the multiplier effect usually destroys European vacation dreams.
The family daily total is roughly $260 to $360. Your 2-bedroom apartment is $120 to $200. Food is $80 to $110.
And I imagine transport jumps up.
Transport jumps to $10 to $20 because you are buying bus tickets for 4 people every time you move. Attractions are $30 to $50. A great structural tip here is that the extensive, beautiful grounds of Mirror Castle are actually completely free to roam, and the interior castle ticket is modestly priced.
That's a great tip for families.
And you keep a $20 to $30 buffer. The absolute secret to surviving on this budget as a family, you must self-cater your breakfast in your apartment. The biggest structural mistake families make is underestimating the compounding cost of eating out in a restaurant for 4 people twice a day in a foreign city. Self-cater the morning, eat one big meal out later.
Let's look at the luxury daily budget.
Luxury is roughly $400 to $650 per couple per day. Your 5-star, historically significant hotel room on Piazza Unità is $250 to $400. Food is 120 to 180, spanning fine dining, premium seafood, and sunset terrace cocktails.
And transport.
Transport is 30 to 60, which covers taxis and perhaps hiring a private driver for an afternoon wine tasting up in the Karst Plateau. Tours and premium attractions add another 50 to 100. Again, even at this highest tier, Trieste's luxury ceiling remains a relative bargain against the astronomical rates of comparable luxury cities in Italy.
And finally, the digital nomad. Because with the rise of remote work, Trieste is starting to hit the radar for people looking to stay for a month, not just a weekend.
For a digital nomad, the monthly budget is roughly $1,900 to $2,700. A one-bedroom residential rental in or near the highly desirable Teresiano district runs about $850 to $1,300 a month, and it drops even lower if you rent in the deep winter.
And daily costs.
Food and daily coffee total $500 to $700. Transport is $40 to $60 for a comprehensive monthly municipal bus pass plus the occasional taxi. A co-working space or cafe working budget is $120 to $200. And you keep a $300 to $450 buffer for weekend entertainment.
Any warnings for the nomads?
The structural warning for nomads: do not treat the Piazza Unità terrace as your daily office. Treat coffee as a quick stand at the bar Nero to keep your daily overhead costs down.
So synthesizing all of this, the real value of Trieste doesn't just lie in the cheaper hotel room rates. The value is deeply baked into the everyday living costs, the $1.60 bus ride that gets you across town, the $1.30 espresso that is world-class quality, the $4 bottle of highly drinkable local wine from the supermarket.
Exactly. The baseline economic cost of simply existing and enjoying the city's culture is fundamentally lower.
But, and this is a massive but, this budget looks pristine, only assuming you don't fall into one of the city's 3 specific logistical pitfalls. These traps will destroy your meticulously planned budget and completely ruin your mood. Trap number 1. The Barcolana room price trap.
We touched on this earlier, but let's explain the exact mechanism of failure here. Trieste has a relatively small, highly inelastic hotel supply. You cannot just build a new mega hotel in a tightly packed 18th century grid. The Barcolana Regatta from October 2nd to the 11th, 2026 injects massive, overwhelming international demand into that tiny supply.
So what happens to the average tourist?
The lived reality is that a traveler decides on a spontaneous early October trip to Italy. They have heard the prevailing narrative that Trieste is the affordable anti-Venice. They go online to book, and they find the only rooms left are deeply mediocre options demanding $280 to $350 USD. They are paying a $100 to $200 penalty per night compared to the rates just 3 weeks prior in September.
So what is the concrete fix? How do you bypass it?
The fix is strictly binary. You either book 6 to 8 months out if you genuinely want to experience the vibrant festival atmosphere of the regatta, or you commute in daily by train from Monfalcone or Slovenia, where supply is less constrained. Otherwise, simply draw a red line through October 2nd to the 11th on your calendar and avoid it completely.
Trap number 2, the airport taxi trap.
The mechanism of failure here is sheer geographic distance combined with municipal transit zones. Trieste Airport is 33 kilometers away from the city center. A taxi covers that long distance at premium high motorway rates.
And people just fall into this.
All the time. The lived reality is a tired traveler arriving late on a delayed connection. They are exhausted. They don't want to figure out a foreign public transport schedule, so they instinctively grab a cab at the curb and suddenly find themselves paying $65 to $90 USD for a ride that the public bus executes for $5 or $6.
That is a massive, completely unsourced error. You're basically blowing a day's food budget in 40 minutes.
It's up to roughly an $85 waste each way. That's over a $170 round-trip financial mistake for a couple. You could have spent $20 total on the bus for the exact same route.
So what's the fix?
The fix is to rigorously, proactively plan your arrival around the E51 or G51 bus schedule or the airport train timetable. Only default to a taxi if you land after midnight when the last bus stops running. And if you absolutely must take one, verbally agree on the fare or confirm the meter is on before you even put your luggage in the trunk.
Trap number 3 is the one that breaks my heart a bit because it involves the romance of travel. The Opicina tram assumption.
This is a pure planning trap, driven by outdated information. The mechanism here is that old guidebooks, travel blogs, and YouTube videos highly hype up this incredible bucket list tram funicular hybrid.
It sounds so cool in the guidebooks.
It is an engineering marvel from 1902 that climbs spectacularly from Piazza Oberdan straight up the steep incline to the Opicina Plateau, but the harsh reality is that it suffered a collision in 2016. Due to municipal bureaucracy, funding arguments, and complex engineering safety standards, it has been suspended and stuck in an endless loop of reconstruction ever since.
So what happens if you don't know that?
The lived reality is a traveler dedicating a precious half-day of their short itinerary to this historic, romantic ride, only to arrive at the station and find a standard, modern, completely soulless substitute bus with absolutely none of the vintage charm.
The penalty there isn't financial, it is just wasted time and profound disappointment.
Exactly. A wasted half-day that could have been spent exploring a museum or sipping wine in a historic square. The fix is to proactively verify reality check the official Trieste Trasporti website before your trip.
But you can still go up there, right?
Oh, absolutely. If the tram isn't officially running, you can take the $1.60 substitute bus or a taxi up to Opicina anyway, because the Napoleonica clifftop walk up there offers stunning, sweeping views of the Gulf and is highly recommended as a reliable alternative. Just don't expect the vintage wooden tram to get you there.
Navigating traps requires vigilance, which naturally leads us into a broader discussion about the general safety profile of the city, because affordability often comes with a gritty edge in European port cities. How much do you need to be watching your back, checking your pockets, and looking over your shoulder in Trieste?
The data and the lived experience are incredibly reassuring here. Overall, Trieste is one of the calmer, safer, more orderly cities you can visit in Italy. It feels Central European orderly rather than gritty or edgy.
So no organized pickpocket gangs.
You absolutely do not have the aggressive, highly organized pickpocketing rings that you find operating in the massive tourist crushes of Rome, Naples, or Venice. Petty, opportunistic theft exists, of course, mostly around the main train station at night or during massive, crowded events like Barcolana, but violent crime against tourists is exceedingly rare.
So if crime isn't the primary threat, what is the actual danger?
The real danger, the primary physical risk that catches people off guard, is the Bora wind. We are not exaggerating for dramatic effect. When it hits gale force, it is entirely capable of physically knocking over an unprepared adult, snapping tree branches, and turning umbrellas into projectiles.
But take it seriously.
Very seriously. If you are there on a severe Bora day in the winter, you need to stay away from the most exposed piers, and you absolutely must keep kids close to the protected sides of buildings. The wind is the undisputed boss of the city on those days.
Let's talk demographic comfort. How does the city rate for different specific types of travelers?
For solo female travelers, it rates exceptionally well. The city center is highly walkable, very well lit, and architecturally open. The deeply ingrained cafe culture means the streets stay populated with normal, benign civic life well into the evening.
And dining alone is fine.
Dining or drinking coffee alone is a completely culturally standard practice here. No one will look twice. For families, the comfort level is high in the flat center grid, but pushing a stroller up the steep, punishing climb to San Giusto is physically tough.
And the nightlife. Is it a party city?
It is highly relaxed. If you're a backpacker looking for massive, thumping, multi-level nightclubs that go until dawn, you will be deeply disappointed. The nightlife is wine bar-led. It's mostly centered around the narrow streets of the Cavenagh district and the edges of the Canal Grande. It's pleasant, conversational, and very low trouble.
And the medical infrastructure.
From a practical health and medical standpoint, Trieste is a well-served regional capital with a major modern hospital offering solid access to care, unlike some of the remote, romantic island destinations we sometimes audit.
Now that we know you'll be safe, and we know exactly how much it's going to cost down to the dollar, what are the actual highlights? What makes it worth going? And just as importantly, what are the genuine, unfiltered letdowns? Let's start with the triumphs.
The triumphs are highly specific to the city's unique history. First, Piazza Unità at sunset. Getting there during the golden hour, watching the fading light hit the intricate Habsburg architecture and reflect off the Adriatic Sea, and realizing this world-class view is completely free.
That sounds incredible.
It is. Second, Miramar Castle. This is a brilliant white 19th century seaside castle built by Archduke Maximilian of Habsburg. It juts out onto a rocky promontory over the water. The interior entry is a very reasonable $13 to $16 USD, and the sprawling, beautifully landscaped botanical park surrounding it is entirely free to enter.
And the historic cafes, obviously, that has to be on the Triumph list.
Yes, stepping into the wood-paneled elegance of San Marco or Tomaseo, sitting where intellectuals debated a century ago, and getting a world-class espresso for under $3 is a triumph of both atmosphere and value.
Any nature highlights.
Another triumph is the karst plateau above the city. You take a cheap bus up and you walk the Strada Napoleonica for the views, or you visit the massive Grotta Gigante cave, which is one of the largest tourist caves in the world, for $22 to $27 USD.
And for culture nerds.
Finally, the literary history. Trieste is deeply intertwined with writers like James Joyce, who lived here for years and wrote parts of Ulysses here, and the local author Italo Svevo. There are statues, plaques, and walking rats, and for a culture-focused traveler, it is a deeply rewarding layer of the city to uncover.
Okay, those sound incredible, but I'm going to drive this next part because we have to talk about the letdowns. We have to be honest. The biggest one, the one that ruins summer trips if people aren't explicitly warned no sandy beaches, Barcola is a concrete slab. If you do not know that beforehand, and you pack your beach umbrella and your romantic expectations, it is a massive, trip-ruining disappointment.
Absolutely. The reality of urban concrete bathing shocks people who didn't do their due diligence.
And then there's the Instagram versus reality factor regarding the weather. Like a perfectly framed, serene, sunlit photo of the Adriatic Sea does not capture the physical reality of freezing in a 50-mile-per-hour Bora wind in January. You cannot photograph the wind, but you will definitely feel it cutting right through your coat.
That is a crucial point. The visual aesthetic of social media simply does not communicate the harsh physical reality of the winter months.
Are there any architectural letdowns?
Another letdown is that many of those beautiful grand palazzi you admire from the square are active civic or private office buildings. They are closed to the public. So the city can sometimes feel like a beautiful, impenetrable stage set. You admire the grand exterior, but you can't actually go inside and explore the history.
Also, I've seen a lot of complaints about overpaying for those karst wine tours.
Yes. Do not fall into the trap of paying premium, marked-up rates for a guided, heavily packaged karst wine tour sold by a third-party agency.
What's the alternative?
The regional public buses are incredibly cheap and perfectly efficient. They can drop you right in the center of historic wine-producing villages like Prosecco and Contevello. You can literally walk off the bus and into a local osteria for a fraction of the cost of a curated tour and have a much more authentic experience.
So if the lack of sandy beaches or the looming threat of the winter wind is a complete deal-breaker for you, where else should you look? Let's evaluate the regional alternatives. Alternative 1, Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Ljubljana is a fantastic, highly relevant comparison. Geographically, it is under 2 hours away by bus or train. Thematically, it shares that exact Central European meets Mediterranean flavor.
Does it target the same kind of traveler?
It competes directly for the exact same traveler, someone who wants an elegant, walkable, highly affordable city off the mass tourism track. The USD costs are broadly similar, perhaps slightly cheaper than Trieste for food, with mid-range doubles running $85 to $130 USD.
So who is Ljubljana perfect for and who is it going to disappoint?
It is for the traveler who wants a compact, heavily pedestrianized, castle-topped capital city. It has a beautiful, vibrant river and cafe heart, and it offers incredibly easy, fast, onward access to Slovenia's stunning alpine lakes, like Lake Bled.
But what are you giving up?
You are missing the sea entirely. You are missing the grand, imposing, monumental scale of a Habsburg seaport, and you are definitely missing the intense, localized Italian coffee culture.
Alternative 2 is the heavyweight champion of the region, Venice, Italy.
Venice is the destination Trieste is constantly measured against, mostly because it is less than 2 hours away by train, and it is the ultimate Adriatic icon. But the cost difference is dramatic and unavoidable.
It's way more expensive, right?
A comparable mid-range double room in Venice is going to run $250 and up, which is double, sometimes triple, Trieste's cost. Plus, Venice now enforces access fees for day trippers on busy days and generally sustains much higher food and transport prices everywhere on the islands.
Who should choose Venice over Trieste, despite the massive price hike?
First-time visitors to Italy who absolutely fundamentally need the Colosseum canals and gondolas starter pack. If you need that once-in-a-lifetime visual icon and are willing to pay the massive premium and physically fight the crowds to see it, go to Venice.
But otherwise?
But skip it if you are a repeat visitor to Italy, a budget-conscious traveler, or if you actively hate dense crowds. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Trieste is for the traveler who has already done Venice. It's for the person who has checked off the famous sites and now wants lived-in authenticity, architectural breathing room, and everyday livability without the claustrophobic crush of a million other tourists.
Precisely. It is the graduate-level Adriatic city. It requires a bit more context to appreciate, but it rewards you with genuine value. Well, it is time to render the final mathematical verdicts. We are going to give the exact scores for the 5 travel groups based on everything we've unpacked today.
Let's start with the backpacker. 8 out of 10. It is highly worth it for the incredibly cheap $1.30 espresso and the immense wealth of free grand civic sites. The only reason to skip it is if you strictly need a wild party hostel scene or a soft sand beach to sleep on.
Next up, the mid-range traveler.
9 out of 10. The mid-range traveler is Trieste's core primary audience. Paying $95 to $150 for a highly comfortable, well-located double room completely beats the Venice markup. It is the perfect, elegant city break for a couple.
Okay, the family. I have a feeling this one takes a hit.
6.5 out of 10. It requires careful, rigorous planning. It is worth it if you are willing to self-cater in a $120 to $200 apartment and manage your daily transport, but you must skip it if you promised your kids sandy beaches or if fighting the Bora wind would completely ruin your family dynamic.
Fair enough. What about luxury?
8 out of 10. It is unusually good financial value. Spending $220 to $400 for a historic 5-star hotel offers incredible Habsburg grandeur for a fraction of standard Italian luxury prices. But you must remember it lacks that modern spa resort gloss. It is historical luxury, not resort luxury.
And the digital nomad.
8.5 out of 10. It is a fantastic, highly livable base. Rents are a reasonable $850 to $1,300. World-class coffee is cheap. Transport is highly efficient. But skip it if you need the massive, interconnected, international nomad scene or the reliable year-round warmth of somewhere like Spain or Portugal. It is quieter, windier, and more isolated here.
So the overall verdict is, book carefully. Trieste is genuinely worth it. It is safe, undeniably elegant, walkable, and a true bargain by Italian standards. But the word carefully is load-bearing here.
You really have to get the timing right.
Right. You have to go in May, June, or September. You must dodge that Barcolana October 2nd to 11th trap. You need to take the bus from the airport, not the Monopoly taxi.
Yeah.
And you have to verify the status of the tram before you build your day around it.
Get all of that right, and it is the best value city break in Europe.
Get it wrong, and you're just overpaying for a windy weekend on a concrete beach.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought based purely on the facts we've covered today. Think about that historic Opicina tram we discussed, suspended since 2016, stuck in an endless bureaucratic loop of reconstruction.
Yeah.
In many ways, does that ongoing multi-year suspension perfectly symbolize the broader tension in Trieste right now? Is this beautifully preserved, aging Habsburg infrastructure simply struggling to adapt to the sudden modern influx of this new anti-Venice tourism? It is a city caught right between its grand imperial past and its suddenly popular, highly demanding present.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.